Fix this, and I'll pay you $155 million. The Saudi billionaire sneered. And the waitress performed FW simple actions him speechless. Sometimes the most expensive object in the room isn't the one everyone is looking at. The crystal chandeliers of the Sterling Grand Hotel scattered warm light across polished marble floors as executives, investors, and industry leaders gathered for what many were calling the business event of the year. Conversations floated through the air. Expensive watches glimmered beneath tailored sleeves. Glasses clinked softly. Most guests barely noticed her. That was nothing new. Sophia had learned long ago that people rarely looked twice at a waitress. They saw the uniform first, the person second. Near the center of the ballroom, a crowd suddenly formed around Nathan's table. Curious whispers spread from one corner of the room to another. The case shimmered beneath the lights. The intricate movement inside was visible through crystal glass. 3 men in expensive suits stood nearby, each wearing expressions that suggested frustration rather than confidence. Nathan leaned back in his chair. "Nothing?" he asked. The oldest of the 3 specialists shook his head. "We've tried everything we can think of." Another expert sighed. "The mechanism simply won't restart." A murmur swept through the surrounding guests. Nathan looked down at the silent watch. Then a slow smile appeared. Not the smile of a man amused. The smile of a man preparing a test. His eyes drifted across the room until they landed on Sophia. "You," he said. Several heads turned. Sophia paused. "Sir." Nathan gestured toward the watch. "Come here." She approached calmly, setting her serving tray aside. The crowd parted. Dozens of eyes followed her every step. Nathan tapped the edge of the velvet cloth. "This watch is insured for $155 million. A few people nodded as though hearing the number again somehow made it more impressive. Nathan folded his hands. 3 of the best specialists in the country couldn't fix it. A few quiet laughs rippled through the crowd. Then he looked directly at Sophia. "Fix this, and I'll pay you $155 million. The laughter grew louder. Sophia didn't laugh. She didn't look embarrassed. She didn't argue. Instead, she lowered her gaze toward the watch and became completely still. For several long seconds, she said nothing at all. And somehow, that silence made the room even quieter. Sophia continued studying the watch while the crowd waited for her to fail. Nathan Sterling leaned back comfortably, convinced the outcome had already been decided. Around him, investors exchanged amused looks. A few guests quietly raised their phones, sensing an entertaining moment. Sophia seemed completely unaware of the attention. Her eyes moved slowly across the timepiece. Not rushed, not nervous, simply observant. The ballroom lights reflected across the crystal surface as she examined details most people would never notice. A faint scratch near the edge. A slight discoloration around one tiny gear visible through the transparent case. A nearly invisible fingerprint on the winding crown. She did not touch any of it. Not yet. Nathan watched her with growing curiosity. Most people reacted to pressure. They talked too much. They defended themselves before anyone accused them of anything. Sophia did none of those things. She simply looked. Finally, she lifted her gaze from the watch. "May I ask a question?" she said softly. Nathan smiled. "Of course." "Who handled it last?" Several guests chuckled. One investor shook his head. "That is her first question?" Nathan gestured toward the 3 specialists standing nearby. "All 3 of them." Sophia nodded. "Before them?" Nathan glanced toward a younger man standing near the back of the group. The man wore an expensive navy suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to important rooms. "My technical advisor brought it to me this evening," Nathan said. Sophia briefly looked at the advisor, just for a second. Then she returned her attention to the watch. The advisor crossed his arms. "With respect," he said, "you are wasting time. The issue is internal. We already checked every obvious possibility." Sophia offered a polite smile. Sometimes obvious possibilities are not the problem. The room grew quieter. Outside the towering windows, Manhattan sparkled beneath the evening sky. Inside, even the servers seemed to slow down to listen. Nathan folded his hands together. Interesting answer. Sophia gently leaned closer to the watch, not touching it, listening. The faint ticking expected from a mechanical masterpiece was absent. Complete silence. Yet something about that silence seemed to interest her more than the broken mechanism itself. She studied the velvet cloth beneath the watch, then the table, then the glass of sparkling water sitting nearby. Her attention settled briefly on a folded linen napkin. Nathan noticed. "What are you looking for?" Sophia looked up. "Patterns." Several guests exchanged confused glances. Nathan laughed softly. "Patterns? Everything leaves a pattern," she replied. "People do too." The smile on Nathan's face faded slightly. There was something unusual about her answer. Not dramatic, not clever, just quietly confident. Sophia then stepped back from the table. "May I have permission to move it?" she asked. Nathan nodded immediately. "Go ahead." For the first time since approaching the table, Sophia carefully reached toward the watch. The crowd leaned forward. Every eye followed her hands. Every conversation disappeared. She touched the case gently, as though handling something valuable beyond its price tag. Then she paused. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes suggested she had just noticed a detail nobody else had seen. And for the first time that evening, Nathan Sterling stopped looking amused and started looking concerned. Sophia kept her hand resting lightly against the side of the watch case. She did not open it. She did not reach for a tool. She did not ask for assistance. Instead, she slowly turned the watch a few inches across the velvet cloth and studied how the ballroom lights reflected against its crystal surface. The movement seemed insignificant, yet the expression in her eyes sharpened. Nathan noticed immediately. "You found something?" he asked. Sophia did not answer right away. Her attention remained fixed on the watch. Around them, anticipation filled the room. The three specialists exchanged uneasy glances. The technical advisor shifted his weight from one foot to the other. For the first time all evening, he appeared uncomfortable. Sophia finally looked up. "May I ask another question?" Nathan nodded. "Ask anything." "When was the last time this watch worked?" Nathan thought for a moment. "About an hour ago." "And where were you?" "Private conference room upstairs." Sophia nodded slowly. "Who was present?" Nathan listed several names. Executives, investors, advisors. The same technical advisor standing only a few feet away was among them. Sophia listened carefully. Every detail seemed to matter. Every word seemed to fit somewhere inside a picture only she could see. "Interesting," she said quietly. The advisor folded his arms tighter. "With respect, this is becoming ridiculous. The watch is clearly malfunctioning. It needs repair, not an interview." Sophia looked at him politely. "Perhaps." Nathan noticed the subtle exchange. His curiosity deepened. "What exactly are you thinking?" Sophia glanced toward the sparkling water sitting beside the watch. Tiny droplets of condensation had formed near the base of the glass. One droplet rested on the polished table surface. She pointed toward it. "That should not be there." Several people frowned. Nathan looked confused. "A drop of water?" "Not the water itself," Sophia replied. "Its location." The room grew still. She carefully lifted the glass and placed it several inches away. Then she examined the table beneath it. A faint circular mark became visible under the light. One of the specialists leaned closer. "What does that prove?" Sophia smiled slightly. "Nothing yet." She then looked back at the watch. "May I?" Nathan nodded again. Sophia gently rotated the watch 90 degrees. Suddenly a tiny metallic sound echoed from inside the mechanism. Not a full movement, just the faintest click. Several guests gasped. Nathan leaned forward. "Did everyone hear that?" The specialists immediately crowded closer. Sophia remained calm. "The mechanism is responding." "Then fix it," one investor blurted out. Sophia slowly shook her head. "No," the answer surprised everyone. Nathan blinked. No. Sophia met his gaze. Because the watch is not broken. Silence spread across the ballroom. Complete silence. Nathan stared at her. The specialist stared at her. Even the advisor froze. Sophia looked down at the motionless watch one more time before lifting her eyes toward the crowd. Someone wanted everyone to believe it was broken, she said softly. That is not the same thing. And as those words settled over the room, Nathan Sterling felt something he almost never felt during negotiations, acquisitions, or billion-dollar decisions. He realized he no longer knew where this conversation was going. The silence lingered for several seconds before anyone spoke. Nathan Sterling slowly rose from his chair. His eyes never left Sophia. Explain that, he said. Sophia looked down at the watch. A broken mechanism behaves differently. One of the specialists frowned. That is not possible. We inspected every visible component. Exactly, Sophia replied. Every visible component. The words landed with unexpected weight. The advisor shifted again. Barely noticeable. Yet Sophia saw it. Nathan saw it too. The billionaire walked around the table and stood beside her. If it is not broken, then what happened? Sophia gently turned the watch another few degrees beneath the chandelier light. A tiny reflection flashed across the crystal surface. Someone wanted attention focused on the mechanism. She pointed toward the edge of the case. But the mechanism was never the real issue. The oldest specialist leaned closer. His eyes widened. There, near the base of the crown, sat a nearly invisible residue. Most guests would never have noticed it. Even trained professionals could easily miss it beneath ballroom lighting. What is that? Nathan asked. Sophia remained calm. A temporary obstruction. Meaning the watch was prevented from functioning normally without actually being damaged. The room erupted into whispers. Investors exchanged puzzled looks. Executives leaned forward. The advisor forced a laugh. You are making quite a story out of a watch. Sophia looked at him. Not accusing. Not confrontational. Simply observant. I do not think the story is about the watch. For the first time, the advisor looked away. Nathan noticed. A subtle tension entered the room. The kind that appears before an important truth surfaces. Sophia carefully lifted the watch and held it at eye level. May I have a clean cloth? A nearby server immediately handed her one. She folded it once, then twice. Every movement was deliberate. Every movement seemed strangely simple. Guests who expected complex engineering suddenly found themselves watching something that looked almost ordinary. Sophia lightly cleaned one small section near the crown. Nothing dramatic happened. No sparks. No miracle. Just a careful motion repeated with patience. Then she adjusted the angle again. A faint tick echoed from inside the watch. Tick. Another. Tick. The crowd froze. Nathan stared. The specialist stared. Slowly, steadily, the movement began operating again. Tiny gears rotated behind crystal glass. Hands that had been motionless for more than an hour started advancing. Several people gasped. One investor actually stood up from his chair. Nathan looked from the watch to Sophia and back again. That is it? He asked. That is all you did? Sophia nodded. Sometimes the smallest obstacle creates the biggest illusion. The specialists examined the watch immediately. Their expressions changed from disbelief to embarrassment. Everything was functioning perfectly. Nathan could hardly believe it. 3 experts had searched for complicated answers. Sophia had solved the problem using observation. Yet her attention did not remain on the watch. It shifted once more toward the advisor standing near the back of the crowd. Nathan followed her gaze, and suddenly he realized something unsettling. Sophia had stopped investigating the watch several minutes ago. She had been investigating people. Sophia remained standing beside the table while conversations slowly returned around the ballroom. Yet the atmosphere had changed. A few minutes earlier, people had been waiting for her to embarrass herself. Now they were watching her the way people watch someone holding a piece of information they do not have. Nathan Sterling glanced down at the restored watch. The steady movement of the hands seemed almost secondary now. His attention stayed on Sophia. "You said someone wanted people focused on the mechanism," he said. "Why?" Sophia looked toward the windows overlooking Manhattan. Thousands of lights sparkled across the city below. "Because when people focus on the wrong problem, they stop asking the right questions." Nathan folded his arms. "And what is the right question?" Sophia turned her gaze back toward him. "Who benefits from the distraction?" The words settled heavily over the nearby guests. The technical advisor forced another smile, but it looked strained. "This is becoming a conspiracy theory." Sophia did not respond immediately. Instead, she picked up the folded cloth she had used earlier. "May I ask you something?" she said to the advisor. "Of course. When you brought the watch into the ballroom, where did you place it?" The advisor hesitated for the briefest moment. "On the table." "Immediately?" "Yes." Sophia nodded slowly. "Interesting." Nathan noticed the hesitation as well. The billionaire had built an empire by reading people. Tiny pauses often revealed more than long speeches. "Why does that matter?" Nathan asked. Sophia pointed toward the watch. "Because the residue near the crown was fresh." One of the specialists frowned. "Fresh. Very fresh," Sophia replied. "Not something that had been there for hours." The room quieted once again. Nathan looked toward the advisor. "Is that true?" "I have no idea," the advisor said quickly. "I am not a watchmaker." Sophia gently shook her head. "You do not need to be." Nathan studied both of them. His instincts were beginning to stir. The same instincts that had protected him through billion-dollar negotiations. The same instincts that told him when someone was hiding something. "Continue," he said. Sophia looked at the watch. The obstruction was simple, temporary, easy to remove. She lifted her eyes. "Which means the goal was never permanent damage." "Then what was the goal?" an investor asked. Sophia answered without hesitation. "Delay." Several people exchanged confused looks. Nathan narrowed his eyes. Delay. The word meant something in his world. Deals collapsed because of delays. Markets shifted because of delays. Entire companies rose or fell because of delays. Sophia noticed the realization crossing his face. "You were expecting an important call tonight, were you not?" Nathan blinked. "How do you know that?" "Because your phone has been face down beside your plate for nearly an hour." She nodded toward it. "Yet you keep checking the time." Nathan stared at her. She was right. The ballroom disappeared from his thoughts for a moment. There was an international acquisition scheduled for final approval before midnight. A delay of even a few hours could change everything. Sophia looked calmly at the watch one last time. "Someone needed your attention somewhere else tonight." Nathan followed her gaze toward the advisor. And for the second time that evening, the billionaire felt the room become very, very quiet. Nathan Sterling slowly picked up his phone. The screen illuminated instantly. Several unread notifications appeared. His expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough for those closest to him to notice. The acquisition team had been trying to reach him for nearly 40 minutes. Multiple messages. Multiple missed calls. One urgent update marked high priority. Nathan lowered the phone and looked across the ballroom. "The final review was moved up," he said quietly. A ripple of surprise spread through the nearby executives. One investor frowned. "That meeting was not scheduled until later tonight." Nathan nodded. "That is what I was told." The technical advisor immediately stepped forward. "There must have been a scheduling mistake." Sophia remained silent. Nathan noticed. "You disagree?" he asked. Sophia looked at the advisor for a moment before answering. "I do not know enough to disagree." The advisor visibly relaxed. Then Sophia continued. "I only know that mistakes usually leave traces." The room grew still again. Nathan had spent years listening to consultants, analysts, lawyers, and negotiators. Yet somehow the quiet waitress standing beside the table spoke with more certainty than most experts he knew. "What traces?" Nathan asked. Sophia gestured toward the watch. "The obstruction. then toward the phone. The delay, then toward the advisor. The timing, no accusation, no drama, just observations. That made them harder to dismiss. One of the specialists folded his arms. You are suggesting all of this is connected? Sophia tilted her head slightly. I am suggesting that coincidence becomes less convincing every time another detail points in the same direction. Several guests exchanged thoughtful looks. Nathan's eyes narrowed. He was beginning to see the pattern she had noticed much earlier. The advisor forced a polite laugh. With respect, we are building a story from assumptions. Sophia nodded. That is fair. The answer surprised him. Then you agree? He asked. Partially. Sophia looked toward the ballroom entrance. That is why assumptions should always be tested. Nathan followed her gaze. Security personnel were entering the room. Not because of her request. Because Nathan had quietly sent a message moments earlier. The billionaire returned his attention to Sophia. You expected that. No, she replied. I expected you to verify information before accepting it. Nathan almost smiled. That answer felt strangely familiar. It sounded like something he would have told a young executive years ago. The security director approached and handed Nathan a tablet. Nathan reviewed several entries, access logs, visitor records, internal schedules. The smile vanished from his face. His eyes stopped on one line, then another. The advisor's expression changed instantly. Tiny details, almost invisible, yet impossible to hide from someone looking carefully enough. Nathan lowered the tablet. The ballroom seemed quieter than ever. Interesting, he said softly. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the music from the far side of the room felt distant now. Nathan looked at Sophia. You saw all of this from a watch? Sophia shook her head. No, then from what? She glanced around the ballroom filled with powerful people, expensive suits, and important conversations. Then she answered with the same calm voice she had used all evening. From the fact that everyone was watching the watch. For several moments, nobody responded. Nathan Sterling stood motionless, the tablet still in his hand. The access records were clear. The meeting schedule had been altered from an internal account. The same account connected to the advisor standing only a few feet away. Yet what surprised Nathan most was not the discovery itself. It was the fact that a waitress had noticed the pattern before anyone else. The advisor swallowed hard. There is a reasonable explanation. Nathan looked at him calmly. Then I am listening. The confidence that had filled the advisor's voice earlier seemed to disappear. Around the ballroom, conversations had completely stopped. Executives who usually dominated boardrooms now watched in silence. Investors who managed billions of dollars waited for answers. The advisor glanced toward the exits, then back toward Nathan. I only adjusted the timing because I believed the acquisition was moving too quickly. Nathan said nothing. The advisor continued. There were concerns, risks. I wanted more time. Sophia remained quietly beside the table. She did not celebrate. She did not look satisfied. She simply listened. Nathan noticed that too. Most people became louder when they felt proven right. Sophia somehow became quieter. So you created a distraction, Nathan said. The advisor lowered his eyes. I thought if your attention shifted for a few hours, the board would reconsider. Several executives exchanged shocked looks. Nathan looked down at the restored watch. The entire evening suddenly made sense. The delayed messages, the altered schedule, the carefully timed confusion, even the watch itself. Not sabotage, not destruction, just a distraction designed to redirect attention. Sophia had been right from the beginning. The problem had never been mechanical. It had been human. One of the investors slowly shook his head. All of this over a delay? The advisor looked embarrassed. I thought I was helping. Nathan studied him for a long moment. Then he handed the tablet to the security director. We will discuss this tomorrow. His voice remained calm, professional, controlled. Somehow that made the moment feel even more serious. The advisor nodded quietly. No argument. No defense. Only silence. As security escorted him toward a private conference room, the ballroom slowly came back to life. Yet the attention of every guest remained fixed on Sophia Carter. Nathan turned toward her. "You saw something that all of us missed." Sophia smiled faintly. "Not exactly." "Then what did you see?" Nathan asked. Sophia looked around the room. Crystal chandeliers, expensive suits, luxury watches, powerful people. Then she answered. "I saw everyone looking for a complicated answer." Nathan laughed softly. The sound surprised even him. "And the answer was simple?" "Most important answers are," Sophia said. One of the specialists stepped forward. "How did you learn to notice details like that?" For the first time all evening, Sophia hesitated. Her eyes drifted toward the city lights beyond the ballroom windows. Life teaches observation when you cannot afford mistakes. The answer was brief. Yet something about it suggested a much larger story. Nathan noticed it immediately. There was history behind those words. Experience. Sacrifice. Perhaps even disappointment. Whatever it was, Sophia clearly had no intention of talking about it. And somehow that made Nathan even more curious than before. Sophia glanced toward the service station where another waitress was already covering her tables. The evening continued around her. Plates moved. Glasses sparkled. Conversations slowly returned. Yet an invisible line had been crossed. Nathan Sterling no longer saw a waitress standing beside his table. He saw a person who had quietly solved a problem that had escaped an entire room filled with experts. "Sophia," he said, "sit down for a moment." Several guests looked surprised. The most powerful man in the ballroom was offering a seat at his table to someone he had mocked less than an hour earlier. Sophia looked at the empty chair across from him. "I should be working. You already did more work than anyone else here tonight." A few investors laughed softly. This time, nobody was laughing at her. After a brief hesitation, Sophia sat down. Nathan leaned forward. "Tell me something honestly." "All right. What were you doing before this?" Sophia smiled faintly. "Serving dinner." The nearby guests chuckled. Nathan shook his head. "You know what I mean." For a moment, Sophia seemed to consider whether she wanted to answer at all. Then she looked toward the city skyline beyond the windows. "A long time ago, I studied systems analysis." Several people exchanged surprised looks. Nathan remained silent, encouraging her to continue. "I spent years learning how complicated systems fail," she said. "Technology, organizations, processes. Most people think failures begin where the damage appears." Nathan nodded slowly. "And they do not?" "Usually not." Sophia folded her hands. "Most failures begin much earlier. Somewhere nobody is paying attention." The billionaire stared at her. Those words sounded less like theory and more like experience. "Why did you leave?" he asked. Sophia's smile softened. "Life changed." That was all she offered. No dramatic explanation. No complaint. No attempt to impress anyone. Yet somehow the simplicity of the answer carried more weight than a long story ever could. Nathan found himself respecting her restraint. Many people spoke constantly about their achievements. Sophia seemed determined to hide hers. One of the investors finally spoke. "Nathan, I think you still owe her $155 million. Laughter spread across the ballroom. Nathan smiled. "Fair point." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a pen. Then he slid a card across the table toward Sophia. "I cannot promise $155 million tonight." More laughter followed. "But I can offer something else." Sophia glanced at the card without touching it. "What is it?" "A position." Nathan answered immediately. "Any department, any office, any city. You name it." The room fell quiet again. People knew how rare such an offer was. Nathan Sterling did not hand opportunities to strangers. Sophia looked at the card, then at Nathan, then back at the card. Her expression remained calm. So calm that Nathan suddenly realized she was considering something nobody else in the room would dare consider. She was deciding whether to say no. Sophia looked at the card resting on the table between them. Around her sat people who would have accepted the offer before Nathan Sterling finished speaking. Some would have framed the card. Others would have called family members before leaving the ballroom. Yet Sophia simply studied it for a moment before sliding it gently back across the table. The movement was so calm that several guests thought they had imagined it. Nathan blinked. "You are turning it down?" Sophia smiled politely. "I am grateful for the offer." That sounds like a yes and a no at the same time. A few people laughed quietly. Sophia nodded. "Probably because it is." Nathan leaned back in his chair. For the second time that evening, she had surprised him. "Explain." Sophia glanced around the ballroom. The chandeliers glowed warmly overhead. Conversations had resumed. Glasses reflected the city lights beyond the windows. The tension from earlier had disappeared. "You offered me a position because of what happened tonight." Nathan nodded. "That is true." "Then I think you are making the same mistake again." The billionaire raised an eyebrow. "What mistake?" Sophia folded her hands. "Judging too quickly." The room became quiet once more. Nathan stared at her for several seconds. Then he laughed. Not because she was wrong, because she was right. Earlier that evening he had assumed she could not solve a problem because she was a waitress. Now he was assuming he understood her future because she solved one. The details had changed. The habit had not. "Fair enough," he admitted. Sophia stood from her chair. "I enjoy my work." Several guests looked surprised. Nathan did too. "You enjoy serving tables?" "I enjoy meeting people," she replied. "And I enjoy observing them." Nathan shook his head with a smile. "You make it sound like research." "Sometimes it is." More laughter followed. Genuine laughter this time. Comfortable. Respectful. Nathan picked up the business card and wrote something on the back before handing it to her again. "Then keep this anyway." Sophia accepted it. "What changed?" "The offer," Nathan answered. "No position. No contract. No pressure." He pointed to the card. "Just my direct number." Sophia looked at him curiously. "Why?" Nathan glanced toward the restored watch. His hands moved steadily now. Quietly. Reliably. "Because every once in a while," he said, "you meet someone who notices things everyone else misses." Sophia slipped the card into her pocket. "That is probably true." "And because," Nathan continued, "I have a feeling this will not be our last conversation." For the first time that evening, Sophia laughed. A small laugh, warm and genuine. Then she picked up her serving tray. The same tray she had carried before any of this began. Before the crowd. Before the watch. Before the offers and apologies. She had arrived as a waitress. She left the table as a waitress. Yet somehow everyone saw her differently now. Nathan watched her walk back toward the dining floor. Calm. Unhurried. Unimpressed by attention. The billionaire looked down at the watch one final time. Then he smiled to himself. The most valuable thing restored that evening had never been the $155 million timepiece. It had been perspective. Because sometimes the people the world overlooks are the very people seeing the world most clearly.